everyone, and welcome to episode 3 of Shift Happens. My name's Andy. I appreciate it's usually the wonderful Pete that is hosting, but I've had the pleasure of hosting this episode. Today's theme is around politics, policies and pay, and I'm joined by the lovely Julie and Olivia, and if you guys don't mind doing a bit of an introduction shortly. But for those that aren't aware, I'm Andy. I've been with Flourish for 3 years and I am the lead account manager. Julie, do you want to give a bit of an introduction to yourself?
I'm Julie Burton and I'm the head of operations for Twinglobe Care. We've been operating for the last 24 years. I've been in health and social care for 46 years this year. So I'm not quite sure what's going to happen when I hit 50 years. But I've seen lots of changes within the sector, lots of government changes, lots of policy changes. And every day is a challenge, but it's a good challenge.
Absolutely. Thanks, Julie. Olivia, do you want to go next?
Thanks, Andy. Yes, I'm Olivia. I am the Policy and Projects Manager at the Care Workers charity. So I lead on kind of our advocacy and campaigning efforts and our direct care worker engagement with our Care Worker Advisory Board and Champions project. In terms of my background, so I have an academic background. I obtained an undergraduate degree in Human Rights and Social Justice and a master's degree in Human Rights, both from Kingston University. But I think probably perhaps most importantly to this conversation, previously to joining the Care Workers charity, I was a care worker myself. I've had experience in both residential and domiciliary settings, mainly delivering dementia and palliative care. And it's a career that I remain and I think will remain proud of for the rest of my life. And thank you for having me.
No, thank you, Olivia. Just to kind of put it into context, my history, I've not worked in social care before. My partner supports adults with additional needs, and my mother-in-law has been in dom care for 35 years. So I've heard the frontline side of things, but I always look forward to these discussions just to kind of see how it looks from all different sorts of sites and views. And I appreciate anything within adult social care is always a hot topic, but I'm really looking forward to kind of getting involved into the questions we're going to be going through today. So, kind of just to start things off, Olivia, if you're happy to kind of go first, when we talk about real change in social care, what does that mean to yourself?
Yeah, thank you. And I think it's a really important question that everybody asks themselves. To me, real change in social care is inclusive. I think it means understanding that whilst there are some universal experiences across the sector, we can't approach the challenges faced with a one-size-fits-all mentality. You know, we have to recognise that there are experiences of care workers that are shaped by facets of their identity, whether that is race, ethnicity, religion, sexuality, gender. But we also then have to recognise that it's broader than that. There are a variety of experiences based on settings of care. You know, there are challenges that a domiciliary care worker may face that a care worker working in a residential setting may not have the same experience of. And so I think that real change means not only listening, but actually allowing to challenge and allowing to actually learn. And I think it means striving for a fairer future for adult social care workers that genuinely reflects the diverse nature of the workforce.
That's amazing, Olivia. And Julie, what's your thoughts on it?
I think for me, the real change starts with our workforce stability. It doesn't start in government. It starts with the people that are actually delivering the care throughout every day and every night that we provide a service. For me, we can't keep building a sector on short-term fixes. We need to look at how we are progressing with career pathways. We talk about people joining the workforce, and a lot of people join the workforce just as a stopgap. And they don't see it as a career pathway, and we need to develop that career pathway. So real change for me begins at the point of listening to the people that are actually delivering the care and stabilising our workforce first and foremost.
And I think that's a really good point, Julie. I've been to many forums and events, and of course, with regards to staff retention, recruitment, it's always a hot topic of sometimes care can be seen as sort of like a stepping stone onto something outside of the sector. Just kind of on that one, Julie, is there a difference between change that sounds good in policy and change that actually improves day-to-day care?
Wow.
If I've put you on the spot there, apologies.
A change that improves day-to-day care. I think that as a sector, we need to understand that our workforce is the key to change, not more beds, not bigger buildings. It's the workforce themselves that are actually the key to us changing everything about how we view the sector, how we approach a professional sector, how we retain staff. We always talk about care with the resident at the centre. And we at Twinglobe look at it as having the workforce at the centre. Because if we have the workforce at the centre and we have stability, then the ripple effect of that is that we have quality and we have growth. And I think that the big change, the big focus needs to be invest in the people that work for you and with you. Everything else will slot into place. It's like throwing a pebble into a pool. When you throw the pebble into the pool, the ripples that you have around the pebble are very small and very tight.
Yeah.
But by the time they reach the end of the pond, they can wash the banks of the pond away. And that's what I see as the real key message and the real point of change in our sector's view.
Amazing. And Olivia, do you feel there's anything you want to add to that, or are you kind of sitting in the same boat? Pardon the pebble analogy. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. I think we need to really shift our understanding that, care workers are not peripheral to the workings of the sector. They are the centre of it. And it's something that we say at the Care Workers charity, which is that we can't expect care workers to go out and deliver outstanding care if they themselves are not cared for. Care workers going to work hungry or going to work feeling anxious, or if they're worrying about their financial situation, that's not a foundation to deliver outstanding care, and that really needs to change. So I completely agree with Julie on that one.
Amazing. And again, it's just such a powerful message, isn't it? But like, as I say, my partner, she works in the at the local college supporting adults with learning difficulties. She actually started in dom care, but she kind of felt like she'd kind of hit her ceiling, as it were, but still wanted to offer help and support wherever possible. So I think you need to be a special person to work in care. And I firmly believe in that. And it's an incredible job that everyone involved does. With regards to my next question, I'm not going to pick on you this time, Julie, because I appreciate I did that last time. But Olivia, so could you share of an example of like a policy decision or like a sector change that has affected the everyday work of care workers?
Yeah, of course. I think the one that comes to mind immediately is the recent Home Office proposals to extend the waiting time for indefinite leave to remain to 15 years for those on health and social care visas. This is the longest and the harshest settlement pathway of any working group in the proposal, and it also follows closely on the no dependence ban as well. We already know that international care workers are at greater risk of hyper-exploitation, but we're already seeing the impact of these proposals in real time. You know, there is a real heightened anxiety across the workforce where international care workers are extremely worried about speaking out on unsafe practice. They feel incredibly restricted in their movement due to sponsorship ties. And I think we then have to consider that from a broader perspective of what this is doing to morale. You know, the proposals actually suggested that volunteering could reduce settlement time because it's considered as contributing to society. And to me, that reflects a profound misunderstanding of the essential nature of care work and what care workers are doing. You know, care workers are contributing enormously, not only to the sector, but to society as a whole. And I think there's already a deep-seated feeling across the workforce of being chronically undervalued. But for international care workers, these proposals only compounded that further.
Absolutely. And I appreciate you touched on it a little bit there, but who do you kind of think, Olivia, felt the impact the most? Care workers, managers, people receiving care, or the families of the people receiving care?
That's a very good question. And I think it's, you know, I think that's kind of what Julie was touching on earlier, is that any decision that is made about the sector will have knock-on effects on everyone involved in the sector. Obviously, it's directly impacted international care workers who are increasingly worried about their kind of like visa status. There's a lot of misinformation going around at the moment, so that's also, you know, increased anxiety, and they're worried about what it means for them, their future careers, and also their families as well. But we also have to understand, and I think it was Skills for Care who noted that since 2021, 80% of the workforce growth has come from international recruitment. Vacancies have fallen, but we also need to understand why they've fallen. It's because we've had an increase in international recruitment. And that's not to suggest that international care workers are just simply filling a role. They are integral to the workings of our sector. So I think it kind of goes back to what I was originally saying, is that these decisions that are made in rooms, when they're actually implemented, they go out and have a knock-on effect on the entire sector, and it's the entire sector that does not benefit at all.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Julie, do you have an example of another policy, or are you kind of sitting in the same sort of section as Olivia on that one?
I sit very much in the same position as Olivia. I mean, for me, it's not just one policy. It's the churn out of inconsistent policies that cause the uncertainty for all of the frontline workers. And that then causes that instability, that extra pressure, the paperwork. And when you have consistent policy, you have stability and a consistent workforce. When you have inconsistent policies and multiple policies, when they just turn them out one after the other, that's when you get the unrest. And what our workforce need is a consistent approach, because that will just allow them to breathe. And that's what they need. They need to be able to get up in the morning and know exactly where they stand, and not have this threat over them all the time of, today something else has happened, another minister has said this, or another party has said this. That inconsistency has a knock-on effect on everybody, not just our frontline workers. It has a knock-on effect on our residents, our relatives, their co-families that live with them as well. We have seen it repeatedly. So I would agree completely with Olivia and say it's the truth is, it's not one policy. It's that whole inconsistent approach to policy drive.
Absolutely. And again, it's from the outside kind of looking in, it's so interesting to get these points of view from across the board, and not just from the top, but also the people that are working on the front line. Of course, again, another hot topic around people on the front line is pay is often central to conversations, particularly, well, definitely in social care. Julie, what do you think would be what would a fairer approach to pay need to recognise?
I think that there are three key things here. One of them, and the biggest one, is that work is skilled. It is not unskilled. I have heard it so many times, unskilled workforce. It is a very skilled workforce. The responsibility is very much around clinical, around safeguarding, and I think that, you know, we have to have professional roles. People need to be recognised for what it is that they do. I mean, certainly within the area that I work as well, I think that we have to recognise fair pay, yes, but fair agreements also. So to me, fair pay and fair agreements, they're two separate things. Because we have to understand that to give somebody fair pay doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to make that individual's life better. It could be the agreements that you have within your company or with an individual that can make their life better. So to give you an example, we recognised that we couldn't increase the pay to our staff, because actually when we talked to our staff, they were saying, if you increase my pay by X, I'm going to lose, whether it's my school dinners, or I'm going to lose my housing benefit, or So we asked, what is it that you need? What do you need from us? How can we help you? And we started a number of different initiatives. So we provide breakfast for all of our staff. Everyone that's coming to work can have breakfast. Everyone that's leaving work can have breakfast. They have lunch, they have meals, they have drink, they have things during the day. That takes the pressure off of them providing for themselves and means that they can budget better. That's just a small example. So for me, fair pay has to recognise first and foremost that we have a very skilled workforce. In many cases, much more skilled than what you have in the NHS. And there's little to no recognition for that.
Yeah, it's hard not to agree with you on that. And just kind of picking off on a point that you mentioned there, Julie, a small example, but a huge gesture. I've not heard of any organisation offering out, breakfasts and lunches and whatnot to their staff. So an incredible thing that you're offering out there. I really feel like I'm picking on you now, Julie, but I'm actually going to ask the question which you did kind of touch on, but is the issue only about pay or also about how care work is valued?
It's definitely not just about pay. It is about how people feel valued. We all have to earn a certain amount of money to live. But if you come to work and the world at large recognises you as a valuable individual giving a valued service, it makes you feel better. It makes you stand straighter, prouder. And I think that we have been subjected to years of undervalued approach. The social care sector was here before the NHS. We as a sector support the NHS. Without the social care sector, the system would collapse. And we always, with our teams, are saying, you're doing a great job. You are worth it. We recognise your value. And I think what's really important is that we are not scared of training our teams so that they can go out to other providers and get jobs with other providers, because what we're doing is we are trying to enable them to potentially follow a career path that we couldn't offer them. But the value is that they could come back to us, and they do. We have people coming back to work with us. So recognising skill is key to ensuring that our workforce know that everybody out there values them as individuals.
Absolutely.
I am really passionate about it.
And that's certainly not a bad thing at all. I'm pretty sure if you ask anyone in Flourish, you ask me a topic and I will go off on one. So no, Julie, amazing. I appreciate there was 3 questions there, Olivia. But would you kind of like to share your thoughts on that? If you need a reminder of the questions, I can certainly do that. But yeah, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, so in terms of kind of what would a fairer approach to pay need to recognise, I feel like there's part of me that's going to echo a lot of what Julie said. You know, what we do know is that care workers are not fairly remunerated for their work. You know, the Fair Pay Agreement is expected to take years to come into effect, but care workers are making decisions today about whether they can afford to stay in the sector tomorrow. You know, so at the Care Workers Charity last year, we conducted a survey and then published the subsequent report on the care worker wellbeing, and that drew on over responses from over 2,000 care workers across the UK, and we had 72% of our respondents saying that they didn't feel financially secure, and that's a real issue. In my opinion, pay needs to reflect the skill, the responsibility, the professionalism and the risk that it takes to be a care worker. It also needs to reflect experience. You know, at the moment, we have care workers who have been in the sector, say, for 5 months versus care workers who have been in the sector for 10 years, and they're on the same rate of pay. And there needs to be that meaningful progression, and there also needs to be pay progression in terms of, you know, a care worker and a senior care worker. That there needs to be that meaningful and fair progression, not only in terms of careers, but also pay. And I think alongside this, pay needs to account for additional responsibilities. You know, delegated healthcare activities has also become an increasingly prominent topic in the sector and an increasingly prominent part of care workers' roles. And again, we conducted a survey and produced a report on care workers' experiences with delegated healthcare activities. And of those who said that they had been asked to undertake delegated healthcare activities, 93% said that they had never received additional pay for doing so. So there's a stark disconnect between responsibility and pay. You know, delegated healthcare activities carry significant clinical risk. They require precision and demand a high level of trust. And that's not to say for a single second that care workers can't take on that. Of course they can, but they should be fairly remunerated for that. You know, and to absorb these extra responsibilities into their existing roles without any financial recognition, it's not fair, and it's also not sustainable. And so I think, to kind of sum up, really, the approach to pay needs to reflect the full kind of diversity of the workforce and the full range of what care workers are doing. Because, you know, the current situation, it only deepens recruitment and retention challenges, and it's not a viable economic strategy at all. I may need reminding of the second question.
No, that's fine. I can't remember which order I asked it in now. So it was, is the issue only about pay or also about how care work is valued?
I think there is a large issue around pay, and care workers have absolutely every single right to care about pay. But it's not only about pay, you know, and I think, as Julie said, and again, probably kind of echoing part of what she said, there is a massive upheaval that is needed challenge the stigma of care work and care workers. You know, as Julie said, there is this real societal misunderstanding of care work as unskilled, as not professional, and I think that's a real issue in the challenges that we face when we talk about the sector, because you know there are all of these subsequent issues, whether that's around fair pay, a lack of career progression, adequate training opportunities, you know, delegated healthcare activities. But the first barrier is actually trying to change the minds of people to say that care work is skilled. So I think that pay is a very prominent issue, but it's not the only issue. And there are so many barriers and hurdles that we have to pass through and jump over first to actually get our foot in the door and to get care workers recognised as the skilled professionals they are.
Absolutely. Thank you, Olivia. Now I'm going to open this out to you both, so I'm going to let you kind of argue over who wants to go first, because this is probably the biggest question I've got. So what needs to happen next to create change that actually lasts?
For me, it's very much around commissioning. Commissioning needs to reward outcomes, basically. I think that as a provider, and I hear many providers sitting on both my shoulders saying, you know, we want to pay more, but we can't afford to pay more because we're not getting the right fees to match the service that we're actually delivering. I would challenge that slightly and say that you need to build your fee framework around the service that you deliver to enable you to be able to pay the hourly rates or the salaries that allow people to live and to feel valued. So we here have a model that is very much based around this is the service that we can offer and this is how much that service will cost. And if an ICB or a local authority doesn't want to pay that fee, then we will say that's absolutely fine, but we will not take the client, because I have a responsibility to meet the payroll needs of the team that we have gone out and employed and said, come and work for us. We're this great organisation, but I'm only going to give you £1. So I think that commissioning has got to change. It needs to reward based on the service delivery that you can offer. I think that more beds is definitely not the answer, and I'm sure that there will be people that will say to me differently, but the future of social care is about people, and it's people, not buildings, that are going to secure our future. So my responsibility to the employees that we have is that I ensure that the income that I have coming in enables me to support them both financially through their pay every month, but also through well-being, whether it be breakfasts or food boxes or whatever that is, to enable them to wake up every day and not feel the pressure of, I cannot meet my bills, I cannot pay for my children's school dinners, etc. For me, I know it sounds simplistic, but in reality, it is quite simplistic.
I think from simplicity, it's quite often the one thing that's overlooked, because it's assumed that, yeah, that would be a guarantee. Olivia, what's your thoughts?
It's a really interesting question, and it's normally when I'm asked this question, my immediate response is, how much time have you got? Because I think there's a lot of things that could be said and discussed, and all of them equally important in their own right. I think one of the things that first comes to mind, I think I've got a few things, is there needs to be a change in language and perceptions. So one of the things that I personally take umbrage with is when we talk about, care workers on the national living wage or having enough to live. To me, the rate of pay at the moment allows care workers to exist, where they can pay their bills, even then not all the time, just about make ends meet. Living encompasses being able to plan ahead. It encompasses being able to go out and buy some clothes if you want some. There's so much more to it than that, and I think, as I said, at the moment the rate of pay allows care workers to exist, and so I think we kind of need to look at the language that we're using, and I guess that then kind of feeds into my second point is about perceptions. When we talk about care workers, we're not talking about cogs in a machine. We're not talking about robots. We're talking about human beings who have their own lives, their own wants, their own needs, and they have every single right to have their own lives, their own wants, and their own needs. And when we're talking about the care workforce, I think oftentimes in conversations we're speaking about them through kind of budgets or numbers, and they're, it's incredibly important that we understand budgets and kind of, quantitative data allows us to provide a snapshot, but behind that are human beings. And I think we need to continually remind ourselves and society and also government that we are talking about human beings. And I think my third point kind of goes back to what we were touching upon last time, is that to create change, we need to challenge the stigma around care work. There's this constant battle against this damaging misconception that care work is unskilled, unprofessional, and it's replaceable. And I think that's kind of compounded by this belief and kind of showcasing of anyone can be a care worker because you don't have to have any qualifications to be one. But not everyone can be a care worker. It requires skills and qualities that not everyone possesses. And I think the wider problem as well is that most people only engage with adult social care when they themselves or a loved one have to interact with it. But there's not this recognition that adult social care is it's not peripheral to how our society functions. Mm-hmm. And as I said earlier, care workers are not peripheral to the conversations that shape the sector. They're the experts. They hold the knowledge and insight that often isn't found in the room where decisions are made. And so I think there needs to be this understanding that care workers should be in every single room where conversations happen and decisions are made about the sector, because otherwise the gap between policy and practice will only continue to widen.
Absolutely. Julie, is there anything I appreciate I've already asked you the question, but where do you think the responsibility sits? Like, is it with government, providers, commissioners, or even wider society?
It's with all of us. It 100% is with all of us. It's with government because they fundamentally have the final say in what happens. Mm-hmm. It's within our sector, for our sector to speak up, to talk more about care and what is involved in care. It's our responsibility as providers to change the perception of the general public of who we are and what it is that we do, and invite people in to actually see our services, talk to the people that provide the care. Just to pick up one thing from Olivia's comments. If you come and you're a care worker at Twinglobe, I would challenge this perception of it being unskilled. Our care workers take bloods. Our care workers are taught to deep suction and look after ventilated people. They are taught to look after people with spinal injuries and brain injuries. They are taught to change trachea tubes. They are taught to administer different forms of nutrition through the multiple spectrum of peg feeding, rigs, all different types of clinical interventions. Our care workers are professional individuals that have credentials behind them. They have qualifications and they deserve to be recognised as such. They are not unskilled. You cannot just walk into a care environment like ours and expect to be able to just do the job. So I think that we, as a sector, our responsibility is to really start pushing this message out there and not sitting back and let other people do the talking on our behalf.
Absolutely.
We can change the perception.
I think it links in quite nicely to what was mentioned about, particularly around the skilled worker side of things, but there's days where I have a tough day at work, but I will hear a story about a day my mother-in-law has had whilst out working, or my partner before she moved across to supporting adults and working in dom care. Like, it really put things into perspective for me. So it's kind of, I might have had a tough day in my head, but now I kind of look and think nothing in comparison to what they've had to deal with. And I know it's certainly a role that I couldn't do. And that's where it kind of linked into, as I say, it takes a special kind of person with skills to work in care. Bit of an open question for both of you. So if one thing could change tomorrow, what should it be? Only one.
Consistent investment in people.
Great topic.
Oh, good Lord.
It's a bit of a tough follow-up, to be fair, Olivia, from what Julie's just mentioned.
Yeah, there's so many things that are running around my head, but I think, I'm going to have to say two. I think the first is for care workers to be recognised as professional skilled workers. And I think the second thing is for adequate and fair funding to be given to the sector.
As Olivia had two, did you want to add a second one in, Julie, or are you happy with your first?
No, I'm happy with my first, because I just think that if we get investment in people, everything else will follow.
Hand in hand. Absolutely. Absolutely. And the last big question is, what makes you flourish? Now, for myself, it's my partner and my two boys. They bring the best out in me. But what about yourself, Olivia?
In terms of what makes me flourish, I think, again, there's lots of things, friends, family, loved ones. But I think the biggest thing that makes me flourish is the members of our Care Worker Advisory Board and Champions Project, and seeing their confidence grow in recognising themselves as the professionals and experts in the room. It's just been so incredible to see, and to see them walk into rooms where care workers have historically been very absent, and showcasing exactly why they deserve to be in every single room where these conversations happen.
What makes me flourish? the key thing that makes me flourish is my job. I have a wonderful family. I've got a gorgeous wife. I have 5 fantastic sons, grandchildren, daughters-in-law. But the truth is what drives me, what pushes me every day is the positivity that I see in our sector and the need to do more. That's what makes me flourish. That's what makes me push myself harder, is I'm not done yet with this sector, and there's so much more to give and so much more to do.
I mean, I feel bad for having to do an outro now. That is probably the perfect ending. Thank you, Julie, and thank you, Olivia, and thank you both so much for your time. Really, really appreciate it. I'm pretty sure you're disappointed that I was a special guest presenter and that it wasn't Pete.
Not at all.
But also, thank you for all of our listeners, and I'll thank you for having me, and I really look forward to seeing you both, hopefully face to face at some point. And thank you again both for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thanks.
much.